Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 28th of December of 2023. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about Kiev because we have a lot of updates, and probably the most important update for Kiev is that the United States of America announced about the final military aid to Ukraine up to $250 million. Of course, it's not billions, it's not like tanks, it's not F-16s, but it's something that maybe will help the Ukrainians to survive for another month or maybe week. Once again, when talking about military aid, the most interesting number for me is the bullets for rifles. And according to this support, the Western countries are going to send Ukrainians 15 millions of bullets for rifles. If you remember, during the previous 3-4 months, the Ukrainians were sent around 3 millions every month, and now 15. So that means that there are very heavy clashes along the combat line, and the Ukrainians need a lot of bullets if they want to stop the Russians, at least something, you know. Now we're moving to another update, is that very interesting analysis we can make about Joe Biden. Haven't you mentioned that recently Joe Biden stopped completely commenting Ukraine at all? You know that the last updates about any relations between Biden and Zelensky in Ukraine, I heard maybe during the debates and let's say strikes and meetings and events in Senate, and after that Biden haven't, according to my understanding, according to the Western sources, haven't published even a single note about Ukraine. I don't know what is this all about, but as I understand, Joe Biden just tried to change his focus, and basically he wants to stop supporting Ukraine and just to finish this mission, because he is about his mind is completely about the upcoming United States president campaign. A very interesting update is coming from the Western press. Most of the Western, the biggest press, reported about Ukraine problems. For example, Financial Times report that Ukraine warns of pension and salary delays without Western aid. It's obviously a disaster for the Ukrainians, but you know that Ukrainians are paying not a lot of money. For example, if you was a soldier and, for example, during the special military operation as a result of clashes, let's say you lost your hand or you lost your leg, the government pays you, as I know, maybe $100 per month. So it's like government support to the veterans who lost hands or legs due to wounds or something like this. So and the Ukrainians, like this part of Ukrainians, also is at risk to lose even this small help. Furthermore, very interesting thing about we got from the New York Times, and now the Ukrainians, the Western press, are saying that Ukraine doesn't need at all its territory to defeat Putin. So they're saying that the solution for the Ukrainians to win is not to return territories. The solution for the Ukraine, the victory for Ukraine is to join European Union and NATO. And it doesn't matter what part of Ukraine will join NATO and European Union, even if just Lvov from the western part of Ukraine joins Europe and European Union and NATO, this might be considered as the victory for the whole Ukraine, according to the Western countries and Western press. Furthermore, interesting updates are coming from the very top level Ukrainian political. For example, in front of your eyes, you can see Yulia Tymoshenko. She is ex-prime minister of Ukraine. Now she has her own party in the Ukrainian parliament and so on. She is very, very popular, and she has some power. She has some influence, and she's the first political player who told Zelensky not to stop, but he asked him to provide the plan B. She told that Zelensky, we know your plan A to mobilize 500,000 to fight till the last Ukrainian and so on, but could you? She was very polite. She told him, Mr. President, could you provide us, the Ukrainians, the plan B? She didn't specify what exactly what she was talking about, what is plan B, but we understand. Zelensky, could you give us maybe an option to surrender or something like this? And this is very important note, because she's the first political person who's located on the territory of Ukraine, not abroad, who ran away from Zelensky, let's say, eyes and something like this. She's the first political on the ground who start not blaming but asking Zelensky to give them another solution, but not to fight till the last Ukrainian. And about last Ukrainian, we got another act of democracy from the western part of Ukraine. In this sense, we can see how the Ukrainian military soldiers were trying to mobilize another soldier. Once again, he just wanted to become F-16 pilot, but they were telling him, yo man, there is no F-16 anymore, just Challenger or Leopard, and he was very, very upset with that, as you can see. Now we're moving to the situation on the ground, and first we're going to start with Kherson direction. Once again, another day without even a single FAB 500 or FAB 1500s on the Kherson direction. We have significant number of Lancet strike. On this video we can see another Lancet destroyed Ukraine artillery system. We have one more Lancet somewhere to the northeast of Tyaginki. As a result of this strike, another Ukrainian artillery system and ammo depot round was destroyed. We have furthermore destroyed Ukrainian Su-24, also somewhere in Kherson direction, but not a single FAB 500 or FAB 1500s. We have very interesting video of FPV drone strike against Ukrainian boat. As a result of strike, as you can see, the entire boat with the infantry on board was destroyed. And you know that I promised you the previous video that we're going to make some analysis, and I made one. Sorry for that, this analysis in Russian, you don't understand, but I'll explain to you. I took the Ministry of Defense report of Russian Federation for December, and you know, when the Russians reported about the situation on the ground, usually they say that as a result of clashes of artillery strikes and aviation bombardments, the Ukrainian lost hundreds of thousands and millions of soldiers and blah blah blah. And during this report, every time at every single direction, they report the types of forces they're using. Let's say infantry force as a result of artillery bombardments, as a result of aviation strike, and based on Ministry of Defense report, we can understand when exactly the Russians were using FABs the last time and when they haven't, and they didn't. For example, according to analysis, starting from the 1st of December till 17th of December, the Russians were using aviation bombs every single day. From the just in the last 4 months. Of course, I didn't take the numbers before. On the 18th of November of December, the Russians used aviation strike for the last time. After 18th of December, the next time they used aviation bombs on the 21st of December. So on the 19th and 20th, no bombardments with the FABs. The next time the Russians used bomb FABs was 23rd of December. And after 23rd of December, we haven't received even a single report from the Ministry of Defense, just on 26th. But I'll remind you that on the 26th of December, the Russians attacked Kherson. If you remember, we discussed this topic that the Russians managed to discover the Patriot crew, the Ukrainians were making evacuation, created a legend, and the Russians attacked the Ukrainian railway station. As a result of strike, 45 soldiers were wounded or killed, including the Patriot crew and maybe Patriot system itself. So that wasn't even a FAB, that was a missile, probably dagger, Kinjal, that the Russians used from their planes. And once again, let's return back, 18th of December, 21st of December, 23rd of December, and 26th. On 26th, the strikes on Kherson, it wasn't FAB. 23rd and 21st and 18th of December are the days, for example, when the Ukrainians reported they managed to shut down the Russian Su-30 and Su-34. So the first update we got somewhere 18th, 19th. So that was the last time the Russians used Su, and after that they took a pause. And the second update on the 21st, 23rd, when the Russians lost 3 more Su. Su-34. So now all these updates, all this evidence confirms our understanding and our speculation probably that the Russians currently don't have possibility to use aviation in this area due to problems with Ukrainian air defense. But today we got another evidence that maybe ruins our logic and give another explanation of the current situation. Now we're moving to Zaporozhye area, to Bradley Square. The situation is critical for the Ukrainians, and we have already discussed the situation in this area. Today the Russians published the video how 3 Ukrainian stormtroopers were trying to capture the Russian trenches, but they haven't managed to do this. The Russians managed to repel the attack with armored vehicle that came for a help. And this is the situation in this area. We're using this video just to clarify the Russian positions. According to this geolocation, the edge Russian positions in the vicinity of Verbovo is somewhere like here. So we will adjust the map before the next video. When talking about the common situation, that we haven't received no geolocations during the day. The only thing we got is report either from the Russian and Ukrainian side. The Ukrainians are saying that they're leaving this territory, they're retreating, they're running away from this territory, and the Russians adding that the Ukrainians not just leaving, they're moving for 500-700 meters per day from Rabotino to the north in direction of Orechov. They're dropping and leaving weapon, armored vehicles, everything they can, just with one purpose: to survive and to save their lives. And the sources are saying that Ukrainians are planning to make two-step evacuation from this territory. The first approach, the first goal of the Ukrainians is to get this line. This is the first defense belt, the first concentration of forces that Ukrainians will try to, let's say, to keep while the evacuation and withdrawal process. So the Ukrainians are going to step back from Rabotino towards this line. The Ukrainians are planning to step back from the fields between Rabotino and Verbovo towards the same line, and of course the Ukrainians will try to evacuate from Verbovo to the same area. After the Ukrainians are able to not establish control, but to create more or less stable foothold in this area with the forces, they will start the second, let's say, withdrawal position operation, and the next defense belt, the final defense belt that Ukrainians are planning to hold during the upcoming winter is N04 road. This is going to be the second Ukrainian evacuation operation. So the Ukrainians are not planning to hold Rabotino, they are not planning to hold even a single square meter they managed to capture during their greatest counteroffensive operation, and they're going just to return back to Novodanilovka and Orechov and to save as many as possible people. Now we are moving to the South Donetsk direction. We have lots of updates, and this is another area, another situation that explains why the Russians stop using FABs at Kherson direction. For example, after a very long operational pause, the Russians start bombing Staromayorsk and Urozhaino with FAB. And there are two explanations. First of all, the Russians are no longer able to use aviation in Kherson, so that's why, not to waste this resource, not to waste Russian aviation, they just took a decision to change their focus from Kherson to Staromayorsk, just to give, not to waste resource, to fly to attack, because there are Ukrainian forces in Kherson as well as Vremivka tactical bridgehead. For now, the Russians don't have possibilities to bomb Ukrainians in Kherson, so let's them bomb in Vremivka tactical bridgehead. The first explanation. And the second one is that probably the Russians are going to penetrate the Ukrainian defense belt in South Donetsk, and there are very high chances that this entire area is going to collapse very soon. And this is the reason why the Russians start bombing Vremivka tactical bridgehead, because within the next few days or maybe a week, the Russians are planning to renew their offensive operation in this area with the purpose to capture not just the villages they lost during the Ukrainian counteroffensive, but also to get this Velika Novoselovka, this stronghold, the main stronghold and base of the Ukrainian forces. Why I'm saying that? Because more and more sources are coming from South Donetsk direction about a very difficult situation from the Ukrainian side. Furthermore, the Russians report they managed to shut down another Su-25 in this area, but the most important updates are coming from the line between Georgievka, Pobeda, and Novomikhailovka. If you remember, there are few fortification areas in this sector. This is the first Ukrainian defense belt stronghold. This is the second one, Ukrainian stronghold. Pobeda itself is also a stronghold, and according to information we have, and as we discussed during the previous videos, the main purpose and the main goal of the Russians was to attack between Pobeda, one fortification area, and the northeastern fortification area from Novomikhailovka. And the main purpose of this to attack just to bypass these strongholds and to attack the Ukrainians from behind. So this is the main purpose. And today in the morning we got the first update from the Ukrainian side that they launched a counteroffensive operation. And the main purpose of that counteroffensive operation was like a part of active defense, but in an implementation of the Ukrainian side, and they basically wanted just to stop the Russians and to slow them down. And that update we got in the morning, and we have already discussed this update. And this evening we got another video, not another video, but another report, official report from official Telegram channel of 46th Brigade, Air Mobile Brigade of the Ukrainian forces that recently was redeployed in this area from Zaporozhye Robotin area. This is brigade, and they publish official note about the current situation. And they basically confirmed everything we discussed in the previous videos, that the Russians currently are trying to attack between Pobeda and northeastern fortification in Novomikhailivka. And as I understand, 46th Brigade was responsible for stopping the Russians and slowing them down. The Ukrainians sent significant number of forces to stop the Russians, but as I understand, according to the 46th Brigade, the Russians managed to break through this area, and as a result of offensive operation, the Russians managed to capture these three lines. Yet we haven't received any confirmation from any mapper, including Deep State or Syriac or any other, but due to this official report, the Russians managed to do this and to enter this area. Basically, they split this territory in two parts and created a very big problems for the Ukrainians in Novomikhailivka. Furthermore, when talking about northern direction, about Georgievka, Marinka, we have more updates about the Russian advances in progress. As a result of offensive operation, the Russians launched and started the ground operation in Georgievka, and according to some mappers, the Russians have already captured this territory, and now this is the approximate area of Russian control. Furthermore, interesting updates are coming from the fields between Georgievka and Pobeda, and basically the Russians have already launched, let's say, the storm operation of this area as well, using FPV drones. On these scenes we can see the attacks against the Ukrainian tanks, infantry, soldiers, and everything took place exactly in this area. So we can make another conclusion based on the geolocations that the next target and the next Russian plan is to attack from Marinka between Pobeda and Georgievka. So this is the second attack, and the main purpose of this attack is to bypass few more strongholds and basically to encircle Pobeda from the north and northeast, and to encircle Georgievka or to attack Georgievka from the southeast. And this will solve a lot of problems for the Russians. Pobeda will collapse automatically, will fall, and as we discussed in the previous videos, now the Russians have complete superiority, they have momentum, and they managed to get operational space, and now they can develop in any direction they want. Now we are moving to Avdiivka area. We have lots of very interesting updates. As we discussed, the Russians continue their offensive operation further in direction of Acheretina. We haven't received even geolocated confirmation of that, but most of the reliable sources reported about the Russian progress something like this. And let's wait because I have some doubts about this progress, because the situation goes not so good for the Russians. But before I start making this video, we got some very interesting geolocation. We will discuss this the next update. According to some sources, the Russians managed to penetrate this defense belt, and as a result of offensive operation, the Russians managed to establish control over this territory. So they're getting closer to the central part of Avdiivka from the north, from the Terikon direction. Furthermore, other Russian sources reported that Ukrainians recently have redeployed significant number of forces, up to 4,500 soldiers. It's like one brigade to Avdiivka direction, but the Russians managed to discover the Ukrainian redeployment of forces, and as a result of 1,500 strike, a significant number of soldiers were wounded and killed, and after that the Russians attacked the territory of concentration of Ukrainian forces with multi-launch rocket systems, and as a result of those bombardments, the Ukrainians lost up to 700 soldiers. We haven't received even a single geolocation of that, but it's just maybe rumors or speculation, but this is the situation that currently is taking place in the South Donetsk and Donetsk area. Now we are moving to Bakhmut direction. We got also a lot of updates. The Russians, as a result of clashes, managed to shut down another Su-25 in the vicinity near of the city Kramatorsk. So this is the third Su-25 just for 24 hours. The Russians continue clashes and storming the Ukrainian positions in Popovo Forest and this cemetery. And we got another geolocation from this area, which confirms the Russian progress. That this is the second geolocation just for 2 days, which tell us about active clashes and active Russian attempts to capture this territory. Probably the Russians still haven't managed to do this, but most of the sources have already reported about capturing this territory. For now, we are not going to change the map because according to geolocations we received, the Russians just started this process. But I'm not saying that there are no Russians. Obviously, it's like a salad here. There are Ukrainians and the Russians. There is a very heavy close combat, and according to lots of sources, including Ukrainian and the Russian, the distance between edge positions in Chasiv Yar and edge Russian forces position is around 2 kilometers. The sources are saying that the Russians can see and can follow and track the Ukrainian movements and Ukrainian first strongholds in Chasiv Yar without specialized equipment. Just regular things, including just an eye. The Russians are able to see Chasiv Yar in front of them. So the battle for the city is about to start, but before the beginning of clashes for Chasiv Yar, the Russians need to handle with Ivanovska and with Bogdanovka. And when talking about 28th of December, we haven't received any updates for these two villages. So the situation may be either stabilized or maybe there are clashes, but we haven't received updates. Now we are moving to Solidar direction. We have lots of updates. As we discussed, the map in Sporno was updated. The Russians managed to enter the village and maybe they control bigger territory, but we haven't received any confirmation. And the Russian sources are saying that the Russians have huge advance along the railways in direction of Vyimka and Ivano-Daryevka. According to information we have as a result of clashes and storming operation, the Russians managed to establish control at least over this territory in direction of Vyimka and Ivano-Daryevka. And this is not like a progress. This is the collapse of Ukrainian defense, and this area used to be one single defense belt of Ukrainian forces that looked something like this. And now we see that Ukrainian defense belt was collapsed, penetrated and split in two parts. The Russians continue moving further, and if the Russians using the same methods are able to get Vyimka, then this is going to be not just like collapse, this is going to be disaster for the Ukrainian forces, because there are very high chances that a lot of Ukrainian soldiers will be encircled or just abandoned for their own way how they're going to handle with their own destiny. Now we are moving to Lman Area, and today we got the video of cemetery of Ukrainian armored vehicles that were buried somewhere in the fields of Terny. This video is geolocated. This is not the losses the Ukrainians have during the previous 24 hours. All these tanks and armored vehicles, engineering machines were destroyed during the previous week, and this week as a result of clashes on this direction, as a result of Russian offensive operation. If you remember, we had a lot of geolocations, a lot of videos of Russian progress, and now we see the results and consequences of those clashes. The Russians are moving further. Once again, a lot of Russian resources reported about more that's an additional progress and additional checkpoints and strongholds that were captured during the previous night or day. So this is like additional progress of the Russians without any geolocated confirmations. Now we are moving to Kupiansk area, and as we discussed, Udai has returned. Udai diary has returned. After a week of pause, he published another video. On this video we see more numbers. The day started of 242 losses, and the day ended with losses on the level of 249. 7 soldiers per day, and we are moving further to battalion. I have adjusted map in the vicinity of Sinkovka because, as I understand, the Ukrainians managed to restore complete control over the village. The Russians were stopped, and the final attempt of attack took place just a few days ago, maybe today, maybe yesterday. These are abandoned tanks and armored vehicles during the Russian offensive operation when the territory was covered with snow. Now the Russians made another attempt when there are no snow in this area, but there was like a tank with demining equipment, but the Russians got on the minefields. These minefields were created, let's say, during the previous nights. As you can see, every single armored vehicle that was involved in that latest attack was destroyed as a result of entering the minefields. If we calculate the number of let's say vehicles on this cemetery up to 20 units were destroyed during the clashes of the Russian offensive operation in Sinkovka. As we discussed, the Russians took a decision to stop any offensive operation, to regroup along the tree line, and now the Russians are going to change their focus, and they will try to move further deep inside the forest, trying to increase their foothold along the village. So they need to control something like this and to have possibilities to attack the village from different sides and with a broad frontline attack, but not from a single point. That is under complete control, that everything is countable and under Ukraine control. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.